Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our event on Bringing Business Back. What's the plan in normal? I've got Dustin Klein here. Just for everybody, as a first time attendee to a REMO event, your camera and your mic have been muted, and you will only be able to see the panelists. And I'll let Dustin take it from here. He's going to be our moderator and MC for today's event. So, Dustin, I'll give it to you. Oh, you're on mute, Dustin.
You're on mute.
How's that? Can you hear me now, everyone? Excellent.
We can hear you.
Thanks. Well, good afternoon. As Aaron mentioned, my name is Dustin Klein. I'm the Chief Content Officer for Smart Business, as well as today's moderator. I want to thank you all for attending our virtual conference on bringing businesses back. What's the plan for normal? What a whirlwind these past couple months have been, right? Without much time to plan or prepare, the majority of us were forced to quickly pivot to sustain our company's ongoing operations. Our business community in Northeast Ohio is extremely resilient. I've got no doubt that many of you in attendance today have found ways to successfully navigate through this unprecedented and unparalleled season in our lives. In Ohio, while the shelter-in-place mandate's been in effect, Governor DeWine's been progressively working to get businesses back up and running. Companies are actively developing plans to bring the workforce online, with a focus on making sure employees are safe and protected from acquiring the coronavirus while at work. The complexities, however, of bringing back people back to work, those are real. And we're all attempting to optimize our plans on getting back to normal. The inspiration of this event was guided by the belief that if we can come together as a community, share experiences, seek guidance, and listen to ideas, that we can help drive a successful opening of our local economy and ultimately drive productivity and growth back to Northeast Ohio. In just a moment, we're going to begin our panel discussion. We've got great panelists today, and I'm excited to hear what they've got to say, as I hope most of you are as well. But before we get started, I wanted to quickly describe how today is going to work. The panel discussion will last approximately 45 minutes. That'll include time for Q&A. You should see a side panel on the right side of your view. That view is 3 categories to choose from located near the top of the panel. The categories are chat, participants, and Q&A. You can search participants and choose to chat with them privately. If you've got a question for me or one of the panelists, you can click on the Q&A category, and you'll be able to write down your questions and send it from there. If you notice that your question is already asked, or if you like a question that is there, you can vote on those questions, which is to the left of that question. This is going to help us prioritize which questions we answer first. Our goal is to answer all the Q&A questions that we can after the panel discussion is completed. And then after the Q&A, we're going to close out the presentation format, and you're going to find yourselves back at the tables that you were at originally. Our hopes is that you spend a little bit of the time there still to network with other attendees through the remainder of the event. And you can also feel free to table hop, which we saw many of you doing as you were arriving today, and network with other attendees through that remainder of the event. Remember, there is a 6-person maximum capacity per table. But to help inspire networking and conversation, Aaron and our group has come up with 2 focused topics that we hope will leverage, that you can leverage to engage with the other attendees after this discussion. First, what's your company's plan to get back to normal? And second, what's the future of work look like? How do you feel about remote work, and how will your company aim to leverage that in the future? Now I want to just thank our host, the Talent Launch Network, for helping to bring this event to life. Headquartered here in Cleveland, it is a network of independently operated staffing and recruitment companies under one common ownership. Collectively, they include the professional specialty brand, Alliance Solutions Group, the manufacturing and distribution employment agency, Alliance Industrial Solutions, and the executive recruitment company, Alliance Search Solutions. So I want to thank Aaron and his team at Talent Launch for bringing this community together for today. And lastly, at the bottom of your screen, you should see all the sponsors for today's event. Feel free to click on their logos and learn more about them at their websites, and we appreciate their help today. So let's get started. I want to introduce all of our panelists, and then we'll launch into the question and answers for our panel discussion. Our first panelist is Fred DeSanto. He is the CEO of Ancora, the chairman and CEO. Fred leads 80-plus employees with a desire to deliver excellence with a winning mindset. Ancora works with a broad range of clients, if you're not familiar with them, from individuals and families to business owners, nonprofits, and institutions around areas such as equity, fixed income, mutual funds, and alternative investments, as well as wealth planning and retirement plan solutions. Fred, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Dustin.
Our second panelist, let's see if we can get her up here, is
she has to click on her camera because we can't bring her up on here.
And there she comes right now.
There we go.
Is Joan Zoltansky, the Chief Experience Officer for University Hospitals. Joan has UHHS has 14 wholly owned hospitals, multiple joint ventures, affiliation and investment relationships, more than 250 health centers and physicians' offices, more than 27,000 employees. Dr. Joan works to improve the wellness of people in Northeast Ohio by ensuring the high quality healthcare is delivered with equity and empathy. And during this current crisis, she's been leading a team of healthcare subject matter experts to help employers sensibly return employees and customers to the workplace. She has a team of physicians, nurses, industrial safety experts, and project managers. And you're going to hear some of the things they're doing and some of the advice she's been giving to people with regard to getting back into the workplace today. So, Joan, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Our third panelist is Debbie Donnelly, principal at Vocon. As Vocon's founding principal, Deb's leadership has expanded Vocon to include more than 200 professional workplace strategists, designers, architects, graphic branding specialists, and technical support personnel with offices in Cleveland, New York, and LA. Deb's passionate about the impact that architecture and design can have on people, organizations, and just as important, if not more important, overall culture. She's going to talk about really how Vocon has been working with employers and created a playbook, thinking about what it's going to take to get back to these workplaces, and going to talk about that nice balance as the pendulum swings back and forth. So Debbie, thank you for joining us today. And our final panelist is Aaron Grossman, the CEO of the Talent Launch Network. As I mentioned, what they did prior to founding Talent Launch, Aaron founded Alliance Staffing Solutions in 2001 here in Cleveland and has done a ton of work in this community. Now the Talent Launch Network is one of the largest staffing companies in the U.S. So Aaron, I want to thank you for bringing us together today and for everything you're doing in this community.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So let's get started. Joan, I want to start with you. As a large healthcare system in Northeast Ohio, UH has been at the forefront of the pandemic crisis. Currently, you're leading an initiative on behalf of UH to provide advisory and consulting services to businesses with the intent to help their employees return back to the workplace safely. I'd love for you to take next few minutes, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how businesses can leverage this information.
Oh, sure, Dustin. Thanks for having me today. There has certainly been a lot of interest in our community and nationally for the work that we've been doing university hospitals on this. And so I thought I'd tell you a little bit of just briefly the story and then just briefly walk through some of the materials that we've created so you can get a sense of what we've created for the business community to access. So just briefly also my background is I'm a critical care physician and a physician administrator that mostly works in medical quality throughout the system. And one of the areas that I oversee is some areas around executive health and some services that we provide for corporations. And so when this COVID crisis started, many people that I knew in the community and many of the other executives, we received many calls from business owners saying, what is this? What should we do? How can we prepare ourselves? What should we do around PPE? Those sorts of things. And so we answered those as we could. And then when the governors around the country started saying restart and back to work, everyone's phones and emails started lighting up again. And so we thought going back to work about 4 weeks ago, we said we need to put some structure around this and really help the people, because we all like to take those calls and help people as we can, but also the people who can't get a hold of us, the people who may not have our cell phone numbers. How can we help everyone who's trying to get back to work to safely return to work? And so out of this, we created a playbook, if you will, that we put on our website, and we were the first hospital system in the country to create anything like this. And it was really a response for the need from the people that we knew. So I don't know, Aaron, if you could put that up and I'll show you, walk you through it.
Yeah, and really quick for the audience, I'm sharing it right now, so you should be able to see it. If you want to enlarge it, to the top right-hand corner of it, there's those 4 little arrows. Click on that, and it'll bring it up into full screen so that you can see the slides.
So,
and when you're And I'm sorry, when you're done with that, you can click the same little box to shrink it back down to see the 5 of us again.
Yep.
So on there, what you will see is that the needs from the community, we talked to many, and I personally talked to many organizations over really since the inception of the pandemic. And these were the people in our organization that I was calling. I certainly have some advice because I work clinically, but also I needed these experts. And these were the people that I was hot dialing all the time to say, what about this? What about this? What about this? And so these are the people who are our subject matter experts when we created content. So we have on there infectious disease doctors who study the spread of infection and viruses like COVID in the community well before COVID ever started. And also, importantly, infection control doctors who think about, for our system, well before the time of COVID, how do you stop the spread of viruses within your 4 walls? So within your facilities, how do you stop the spread of viruses? And so that's what infection control is. And also, importantly, operators. So people, our chief operating officer and our president of our academic center, who are thinking about this from many other aspects, including the HR aspect and the risk management aspect. And then also the most frequently asked question is testing. Testing, what is the employer strategy for testing? So our chief pathologist, Dr. Christine Schmatzer, is there also as one of our subject matter experts. And so these were the types of people that we were convening to review content with us and publish content and also connect with businesses. Not pictured there are many supporting people, industrial hygienists, quality managers, safety nurses, many people who are thinking about these types of topics, again, as a career well before the time of COVID. And so what we did is, after talking and creating this content, we really put this in 3 verticals because this is what we were hearing from the business community. They wanted to know, number 1, how do I protect my people? How do I keep my employees and customers safe? Number 2, how do I protect and keep clean and safe my facilities and my equipment? And number 3, and especially from the C-suite level, is how do I build trust? How do I communicate and build trust? And those are all things we've been doing during this crisis in our organization, thinking about the safety, the PPE on the individual safety, cleaning of our facilities, accessing EPA and using the recommended cleaners for the right amount of dwell time, those types of things. And then also in that building trust, we stood up a whole infrastructure leadership just for COVID response. And so giving some advice about that. And then just briefly, you can see here on the presentation what some of our materials are. We wanted to make sure that what we created was free to access for anyone to access this, so anybody could have access to this. So you download our playbook, if you will. And on one of those, we have general content, but also we provide color. So we tried to provide some depth and some examples, because there's 2 types of information out there. There's trusted information, the CDC, Ohio Department of Health. But what we wanted to do was provide some depth and some real life examples to that information. And then also there's the unknown. There's where we don't have CDC guidance and where we don't have guidance from the Ohio Department of Health on things that are still being studied. And so we tried to have our experts give expert advice on that as well. One of the two things that usually people ask me about in this is, one is they like our trademark phrase that we use, we coined in our organization, around safety, which is easy to remember, which I like. When I try to drive safety initiatives, I like something that's easy for people on the front line. So it's screen, clean, and 6 feet in between. How are you screening people before they come into the workplace? What is your cleaning process? And that physical distancing, that 6 feet in between. And then also lastly on there, which people can reference, is many questions about the screening process itself. And so we give our example of how we screen. We screen every person that enters our facilities with temperature. So we give that very detailed, here's the temperature we use, here's how we do it. If somebody screens yes to these questions. I also remind people to access this on our website, because this information changes weekly, daily, hourly, and we're updating it all the time. So that's where you can find the information. Thanks. So I'll stop there.
Joan, question for you. what has been the response from employers as you've started to talk to them about this? Are you seeing a lot of people take this information and begin to try to implement it pretty significantly?
The response is people want more. People want more. And within 3 weeks of doing this, we put out this content because we were all taking this calls. This is what we were doing anyway, trying to help the people in the community. And then we put this up, and then now there's been such a huge response to it that we've stood up the service lines now. So if you need screening in your facilities, those are the services that we can provide for you. Reviewing of back to work plans, walking people's physical environment around these personal safety, environmental safety, those types of things. There's been a huge response.
Great. Thank you very much. I know we're going to ask you a few more questions shortly. Deb, I want to turn to you. As the principal of a premier architecture and design firm, many of our attendees know your company for the creativity and vision in the work you do, helping create amazing workplaces, amazing cultures. With the onset of the pandemic, you've become a subject matter expert around helping companies with the strategy and design to ensure the safe workplace. Can you give us some insight about what you're doing and some of the calls you're fielding?
And I apologize because I was unable to hear Joan. So Joan, I don't want to be, for some reason, I'm not able to hear the other panelists. So I hope I'm not being repetitive. I think when everything pivoted for us on March 16th. So context for me, I call this week 10, day 3, is how I start my days. We have clients of all shapes and sizes, but we decided right out of the gate to be givers as opposed to takers, obviously, in this moment, and to really provide context for people who were really kind of starting to wonder what to do next. And so partnering with UH and the clinic has kind of was like one of our first calls, because through their lens, we felt it best to advise our customers on sort of the timeline and how to react in this moment. And so our approach in our playbook, which we kind of wrote and continue to write, we write it pretty much and update it every day through the lens of our customers and through the lens of the healthcare professionals like UH and the clinic that we talk to like really, really often for their advice and guidance. But our approach has been not to overcorrect and to really phase this in. We're calling phase 1 burn-in, which we're all in right now, which is we're learning, it's uncertain, and we're doing things that are very practical and measured to keep our employees as safe as we can in these uncertain times. And the most important thing is to reduce fear. Because if there's anything we're knowing, we also created a survey right out of the gate, and we have surveyed over 4,000 employees, both in Northeast Ohio and across the country. And the number one thing about returning to work is fear. Fear that other employees have COVID. Number 2, fear that their employers are not keeping their spaces clean. 3, that people are not, their employees, other employees are not following protocols, washing hands. That the employers are not providing Purell and other safety and taking precautions, like my mask. I'm at work right now and I have my mask. Am I wearing it in the common spaces? Am I doing the right thing? So in our playbook, it's very much a phased approach. There's also this moment where we're protecting our clients from what I call a boondoggle, a potential money grab of things that just simply don't make sense. People are out in the market trying to sell people a lot of things that simply don't seem to make sense. And we're really trying to be cautious of those moments. Don't throw it all away. Be prudent and be practical in this moment, because we don't know what the future has. We don't know when mass testing is available down the road, how that will affect the back to work playbook. So we're being very practical in our approach, and that's probably how I'll kick it off.
And Deb, let me ask this as a follow-up.
Sure.
Do you have any tips or guidance in terms of how they should optimize their strategy? How should they think about starting? Obviously being calm, not overcorrecting, but is there something they should be doing first to get the ball rolling?
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing we did is we are helping people take a phased approach to come back. So in most cases, June 1 in Ohio is kind of the magic date that Governor DeWine has said, okay, come back. And that's kind of what we're seeing people get their head around. And not everybody can come back because there's health issues, or you're related to a parent who has health issues. So we're not making it mandatory, but we're saying in order to reduce fear, you have to start to say, we need to start to figure out how we live with the virus. And so we are phasing ourselves back. And I'll speak personally. We have shift A and shift B. We are coming back. Shift A comes back 3 days a week, shift B 2 days a week, and then reverse that. All of our conferences have been reduced. We have done physical distancing plans throughout the office. So all of our chairs have been removed. I'm sitting in a conference room now that was 4 people, that is now 1. There are one-way directional signages through our office that show you which way you're to walk. And our workstations have just through the way the chairs are, where you can sit and where you can't sit. So those physical distancing plans are things that we have done for a lot of our customers to give them the roadmap back. So I don't see anyone across the board coming back all at once. No one is doing that. So
Thank you.
Encouraging phase back to work plan.
We appreciate that, Debbie. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the playbook in a little bit. Fred, I want to ask you a few questions. You've got, your wealth management firm. You've had a shift from what was a face-to-face business into a virtual environment in a short period of time. I'm interested in how your firm managed through the shelter-in-place mandate and what you're doing now to start bringing back people to normal. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you've had a shift, what you missed from it, and how you're looking at kind of phasing that back in.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks. And I appreciate the comments from Deb and Joan. They're very helpful. We are in a business that is an essential business, obviously on the investment side. But we had really we had a number of concerns. One, we had to make sure that our people were safe, but also we had to ensure that the clients thought their investments were getting looked at and managed, and we didn't miss a beat. So we have had procedures in place should there be a catastrophe, should the building be on fire, should something that everybody be able to work remotely from home. So the remote aspect of people being able to get in their systems, do the work they had to do, that was not an issue at all. And we did a 2 or 3 day test where we rotated people in and out to see how that worked and see how the system handled it. Our business, I like to say it's a contact sport. Our people are out in front of our clients. We're meeting our prospects. We're meeting our centers of influence. So there had to be a real dynamic change on how we communicated with our clients, how we continue to look at our pipeline, and how we continue to service that. I will tell you it's been 2 months. I think it was 2 months as of Saturday. Our business itself has been okay. It's been just fine. The things that were in the pipeline using Zoom and getting multiple people involved in those meetings has been easy and has been very transparent. From going physical sign up to clients, we're now all virtual, and we haven't missed a beat. We haven't missed a beat in that. What I can tell you, what I think the company has missed is the energy and the culture that when you're all together, it kind of breeds on itself. And I think that in itself has been very difficult to maintain. So what we've done is, we have Tuesday coffees, we have Friday lunches, for all the employees, and everybody gets on Zoom and you try to, you try to see each other, and we have constant communication. So those have been some of the things that we've done. We're slowly going back. Right now, we're voluntary, and we're doing a lot of the things that the doctor and Deb had talked about in bringing people back. We are putting a kiosk in our building for temperature. So when someone walks in, automatically it'll take their temperature and put it down. Actually got that from one of our clients, MCPC, and then also for visitors coming into the building. So no visitors are allowed in the building yet, and we're voluntary right now, and then we'll slowly go back in.
Excellent, thank you. And I want to make a reminder before I switch over to Aaron and ask you a few questions. If you have questions for the Q&A portion after we talk to Aaron, I've got a few more questions for this group, and then we're going to turn to your questions. You can vote on those questions, and I see we've got a number of people who have started to vote on those. So please enter questions if you have your own, or vote on the ones that are already up there as well. There's a button on the left side of the question with an arrow up that you can vote on. So Aaron, let's turn a little bit to you. As we prepared for this event, you and I have talked probably a good dozen times in the last week and a half. You've got 250 employees scattered across the United States, with the shelter and mandates in different states having different impacts on people. You've had to move everybody to a remote work environment, and you've had a lot of challenges along the way because of that, with remoteness. But you found some interesting ways to incorporate a work option plan that you think may continue for people moving forward as they even get back into the offices. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I appreciate everybody coming today. So this is by the way, one of the vehicles that we've used throughout this experience that I'll talk about here in a second. But, interestingly enough, years ago, when I started to create the technology stack for our company and really kind of be thoughtful about it, our goal was to figure out how we could be able to bring in top talent from anywhere where geography didn't matter. Didn't realize that it was going to be tested in this way. We weren't thinking that everybody would be remote, but as the shelter-in-place mandate took effect, literally on a Friday, we told all 250 employees that as of Monday, they were going to have to work from home. And so the good thing was that we had a technology structure for them to be able to do that. Literally, all of their phone numbers and everything like that sit on their Chromebooks, so they could literally come home as long as their internet bandwidth was acceptable. And what we did is we made sure everybody tested their bandwidth, and then we were willing to kind of help with the cost to increase bandwidth to ensure that they could leverage our systems and use video appropriately. We started to work. So we quickly went to training on making sure everybody was comfortable working from home. But the biggest thing that we've noticed, which is just crazy for me, is that we really, because everybody was working from home, and while we're a services business, we're very much tied to our systems. Because when you think about it, we place people at our companies, but there are employees, and so they have to fill out paperwork. We have to be able to interview them still, and so we had all of this video interviewing technology that was embedded in, and we were still able to remote onboard our talent so that we can put them out to work. But what we didn't have is business intelligence that could allow us to see what everybody was doing throughout the day and making sure that the activities that they were documenting to our system, we can understand kind of the productivity of each and every employee. And so we over the last 6 weeks, we've just completely embedded ourselves into creating optimized business intelligence to support our productivity. And what we're seeing is that prior COVID, when everybody was working in offices, to right now when everybody's working remotely, we've actually doubled the amount of productivity that are coming out of our staff, which is just wild to me. I was not expecting that at all. And what I've also learned, because we were using video before, it was part of our culture, but it wasn't as active as it is now. But we at least had some guidance and understanding of how to use it. And so we've really embraced it throughout the United States. And I have several of our operating companies that have told us, because a lot of our operating companies might have 8 small offices in a state, like Maine, for example. We have the largest employment agency in the state of Maine. They have 8 offices throughout the state. Those employees don't get a chance to actually see each other all the time. Now we were forced to use video, and now they're interacting with each other in ways that they never had before. So that's been a pretty big plus. And we found this technology, Remo, early on. And what we've been doing is, because now all of our operating companies throughout the United States never had a chance to really meet each other. So every Thursday, we've had this Thirsty Thursday happy hour on this tool. And what it's able to do is bring all of the operating companies, every single employee in our network, can come together and actually start meeting each other for the first time, which has been kind of a blessing in disguise in that way too. So we've seen some positives of this, but just like Fred, I mean, we're in the services business. We still need to meet people. To be able to bring on a new client, it's still very important that we build a real relationship with them, because they're trusting us with providing staff to their offices. And so that's the most difficult thing for us to overcome right now, is how do we still build that trust, meaningful relationships with prospects who don't know us intimately yet. That's still been a challenge for us, and so we're still embracing the idea of how do we get back to work quickly. Now, interestingly enough, is that we did open up our offices here in Cleveland this Monday. We're not making it mandatory for everybody to return, but we know that there's this cultural thing that's going on. I'm sure other people are feeling it too, that some of our staff are like, they just want to get back to work. They want to get back in the office. And then we've got other ones who are really nervous about this, and they might have children in a home or people that have potential issues in their family, and they don't want to create any type. They don't want to expose themselves that thing can expose their family members. So they're more hesitant to want to come back to work. So we opened up the office. We didn't make it mandatory for people to come back to work this week. And I think we've roughly, I just found out this morning, I think we might have 10 out of, I think there's about 110 people that work in our corporate office and independence. So that was interesting that most people are still choosing to kind of stay back at this time. So those are the things that we're doing, and we're like Deb had mentioned, we're doing a staggered start. So we're saying that anybody can come back to work, but you have to come back and work in teams. So half the teams can come back this week, half next week. But you can still work, if you're still on a team that can work from the office, you still have the opportunity, if you want, to work from home. So that's really kind of what we've been working on right now. We have somebody who's doing temperature checks too, coming in and out of the office as well. So.
Debbie, thank you, Aaron. That's interesting how you've been able to approach this. Debbie, given those issues that Aaron talked about regarding remote work and potential changes with people still wanting to do that, how do you think this might affect the future of office workspace? Do you think that the pandemic's going to drive any of these and turn them into long-lasting changes?
Again, I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear. I'm so bummed that I can't hear my fellow panelists. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that. You guys there's circles going through each of you, three of your faces. So thankfully I heard what Aaron had to say yesterday, but I think remote work, again, I'm in the camp of not overcorrecting. There are employers saying stay home for the rest of the year, like LinkedIn and Twitter. But I truly believe in the statement that culture eats strategy for lunch, and that the companies with the greatest cultures will always outperform the companies that just focus on density and the numbers. So I believe that this is a reaction to a situation we currently have that involves safety, that ultimately we will swing back to the pendulum being there'll be a balance of remote work in concert with coming back to work. Because those that are at home are facing childcare situations. We need to get this balance back to work. So I think that there will be a group of people that probably do stay home in this moment, that find it to be a really good balance. Maybe the group of IT people that have begged to stay home and be remote, that end up being at that place. But I'm not going to predict that. Right, it's too soon to predict that. I do think there'll be a percentage, but I think you may find that percentage of people that do stay home, it may be offset by a little bit more space in the workplace that's needed, a little bit more elbow room. The conversation 13 weeks ago was density. The conversation now is more about a little bit more elbow room. And by the way, we're not bringing back the private office. That's not it. People keep saying, are we bringing back the private? That's not the conversation. It's really about new planning strategies. We're being asked by one of our largest global customers right now. We're rethinking their planning strategy, which is really an exciting moment. We're at the epicenter again of change, and that's what this moment has done. When 9/11 happened, the conversation shifted to security. This moment has shifted the conversation to safety and health. And if those of us that are in this business that don't recognize this, probably will be obsolete soon, because you got to shift gears. The world has changed, and we need to move with the change and be with the world and be agile. And that's what we've done. And I think that's what we're doing with our clients. And it's a hard time, but yet through the lens of change is also opportunity, is the way I look at life.
Yeah, Joan, I'm gonna ask you in a moment about safety and some of the issues as people are starting to bring people back, some of the other things they should do. Before that, though, Fred, I want to ask you a question. You mentioned something earlier about bringing people back on a staggered basis. How long do you think, from your perspective, it might take before your team, since you've been talking to them, feels comfortable working in the office again on a regular basis? And based on that, do you think you might suffer some productivity challenges in the second half of the year?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, a couple things. The one thing I want to comment on what Deb said, you've gone through a lot of different changes, 9/11, 08, 09, and people weren't, the banks were never going to lend again. People were never going to fly again. People's memories are pretty short. They're pretty short. I do think people are going to come back to the office. I mean, I think people thrive in environments where they're working around other people. I think the one thing that we have heard from our people, and people that are single, that are living by themselves, they don't like it. They want to be engaging with their other people, and we just have to do that appropriately now. I think, from our perspective, there's so many uncertainties still going on. We don't know what's going to happen with schools going back in the fall. Are they going to go back? Are they not going to go back? I think they're going to go back. If they don't go back, some of our people are probably going to work more remotely because they don't have the childcare sitting in their home. They're going to have to handle that. We are not forcing anybody to come back to the office. In fact, the high risk people, we're telling them not to come back. But the other people, most people want to get back to the office. Now, it might be 3 days a week. We have our offices on the east side. We have people that live in Avon and Rocky River. What we have found from some of them, they're saying we spend 2 hours a day in the car. Working from home, we've gotten much more productive in what we're doing and how we're handling our clients. But we know we have to be in the office, but it might be 3 days a week instead of 5. So I am all for getting back to the office. I don't think office space is going to go by the wayside. I do think office space is still going to be needed. I agree with Deb that it's probably going to have to be a little bit less dense and more spacious. But getting back to the office is critical for our business, because how we engage with our clients and how we service our clients and really how we try to drive our business. It's going to be, I think the second half of the year for us is going to be more difficult than the first half.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So Dr. Joan, I want to talk a little bit about safety with some of these issues as people are thinking about it. And this actually is going to incorporate a few of the questions that I can see on the right side that people are interested in. First, what's your perspective on how long you think companies may have to monitor their work environments with respect to COVID?
So that is a great question. That's the $1 million question, is what is going to happen with COVID, and how is the virus going to behave during the summer, during the fall next year. And so when we talk with companies about restart efforts, we are very clear that many times you'll find people are thinking about restart, but they are not then thinking about what happens in December. If the curve really goes high in December, add flu season, then what happens? And so we're saying, if you have a restart plan, also have a plan to scale back. And I like what I'm hearing from the other panelists in their own organizations, where they're giving people the option to stay home. Important to be able to encourage that. But in our organization, we actually have 8 epidemiological models that we're running and making business plans off of. They're not all the same priority, but we're considering a number of different models of what will happen so that we can project our volumes, our revenue, so that we can have a stable organization. So it's not just one model.
So should companies have someone dedicated to taking temperature checks as staff is coming in? Is that something that you folks have been recommending?
So there's really a variation in how people are interpreting, and this also goes state by state and sometimes municipality by municipality. And so how people are interpreting what the governor says when they say screening, you need to screen your employees. Some organizations are leaving that up to the employee. And then there are other levels, like you may have seen in the news, Apple stores are temperature checking all employees and all customers before they're entering. So there's a wide variation, but some form of screening. Again, we screen every person who enters our facilities right now. So some process where you are confident that someone is asking those questions about the COVID signs and symptoms, about travel history, and then that they are taking their own temperature and that you have some understanding of that, of what that is, or taking the temperature for them.
What are your thoughts on wearing masks in the office?
Again, I'm in an organization where we mask, all of us mask all the time, including actually now the patients when they leave their rooms. So masking is the strategy. We're certainly behind that nationally and within our own walls, and recommending it for other organizations.
And I've seen people talking about wearing gloves or using sanitizer or washing their hands all the time. How should people be approaching that? Because they're going to be touching doorknobs or sliding things or other chairs.
So for me, this is really an important point to think about differently than how we used to think about them. When I go into a manufacturing organization, people have been wearing gloves for a long time, but they wear gloves for self-protection. In a hospital, in healthcare, we wear gloves to protect others. And so it's like a new culture, it's a new mindset of what personal protective equipment is in organizations outside of healthcare. The personal protective equipment is to protect yourself sometimes, but also very importantly to protect others. So wearing gloves all day long actually is not protective from spreading the virus to others, but wearing it for a certain task, taking it off and cleaning your hands. So we certainly like to remind people that the backbone of this, when you're looking at spreading the virus by hands, is hand hygiene, not wearing gloves all day.
So a couple more questions, and then Aaron, I want to come back to you on a few items, and then Deb. Dr. Joan, what is the recommended process if an employee tests positive for COVID, and what should happen if you suddenly have multiple staff members testing positive?
So the first thing you would do is contact your local health department. Certainly if someone self-identifies or you understand that, you would ask them to not come into your workplace. And then if they are sick, to go to the emergency room, seeking medical attention for the individual person, but getting advice from your local health department, because that varies department by department.
And then my next question, last question along this set is, so let's say a company, let's say Fred or Deb or Aaron or anyone out there sets up some sort of policies and safety protocols within their company. How should they approach things if an employee decides or chooses not to follow those safety procedures?
So a few thoughts on that. One is that when you set up these safety procedures, you may have someone that doesn't want to follow them. And you have to think about, can you reasonably accommodate that person? So the first thing you would do is try to think about whether there's a way to accommodate that person. And, Fred and Deb and Aaron have been talking about working from home. Is that possible to allow that person to work from home? Then the other aspect of it is really a risk management legal aspect, where the laws about wearing masks vary from location to location. So you'd have to work within the laws, because there is the law of having to wear a mask, and then you also have to integrate accommodations, whether there is a law about accommodations that have to be made, those types of things. So it really depends on where the person is. But first, I would say, can you accommodate the person?
Thanks. I do have one more question for you, which I think is a follow-up to this. What's the protocol if somebody tests positive for COVID-19 in a workplace? What do you tell your employees?
The other employees?
Yes.
So that, again, is something that your health department would guide you on, because you want to let people know that they have been exposed, but then also protect the privacy of the person. So the health privacy of the person who was sick. And so that is something you would work with your local health department to do, contact tracing, those types of things. That's where your health department would help you.
Thank you. Yeah, Aaron, I want to switch back to you for a moment. Outside of your remote work staggered strategy, what else are you thinking of doing to ensure a safe workplace for your offices?
Well, the staggered one was a big one, and it was interesting how we came up with that idea because we didn't know how granular to get around this. So when we were looking and measuring how the tables are structured now, if you were sitting next to each other, you were 6 feet apart as long as you were sitting down. But if you stood up, you could get closer to 6 feet. But then it was the people behind you that were not 6 feet, and that's what kind of drove us to the staggered team environment. So one team comes in and one team sits back. But the things that we were really talking about were those communal areas. So we have a very open environment. And I was actually talking to Joan. We were talking to Joan last week with some people on our team around masks. And our thought was like we were going to recommend it, but we weren't going to mandate it. But now understanding in the open environment and how long the particles can potentially be in the air, we're advising that people wear masks while they're in the office. We also want to make sure that there's there's a cleaning protocol in the communal areas. So we have a lot of communal areas. The space was built actually to invite guests over. As some people in the audience might know, we host other companies to come in and run events in our office space. So we've eliminated that for the moment until this thing clears up. So we're not allowing people to come into the space. We've got the health checks. We have a healthcare staffing firm that helps us provide, has somebody that can work on our premise to be able to do temperature checks, and we do that for other clients as well. And then again, offering the ability to work from home if they don't feel comfortable or safe. But we want to make sure that there is a standard that we're following, and that standard it is the standard. So there's not going to be like we're going to do one thing for somebody and not another thing for another person. So we want to make sure there's consistency in how we're approaching this holistically throughout all of our operating companies.
Hey, Dustin.
Thank you.
This is Fred. Just Deb had comment on they're still going to the open environment. No offices. We're kind of the opposite. Most of we have a lot of offices in our space. So we actually have put people that were in cubes in offices, to separate them. The only area that we're really taking a hard look at is our trading area and our alts area, where we're going to have to spread some people out. But other than that, we have very large. The people will be spaced extremely well. They don't have to wear a mask in their own office, but as soon as they walk out, they have to wear a mask.
Fred, what did you do before you opened the office in terms of sterilization or cleaning
So
of the office?
we have a cleaning company, and Deb is right. They want to sell you a lot of stuff that may not be useful, but we sat with them. We have a team at the office or at the company that is really handling coming back to the office and how the office is cleaned. So we've done a number of things. Disinfect the office. We're doing that once a week. Really disinfect. Heavy cleaning. The other thing that we've done is each bathroom is only allowed one person in at a time. Each employee is going to have a tag that they can put on the bathroom door. And then there is a kind of hook that each employee is going to have that they're able to open the door and then shut the door. So there's never any touching of any device or any structure in the office. So we've done some of those things. And then there is some companies out there, and we're exploring them, where they can come in and disinfect with this spray. And it's not, we don't know if it's, if it's perfect yet, but they can come in once a week or twice a week that we think can help disinfect the space more than just cleaning it.
What are you doing with regard to meeting with prospects and clients? Are you going to be bringing people into the office?
As of today, no prospects or clients face-to-face meetings. In fact, in the office, although we have a number of meeting rooms, If a team wants to get together, they can do it in the office via Zoom. So we are not letting 4 or 5 people sit in a conference room. So they're going to have to do it by Zoom. The other thing is we used to supply food for our employees in our office. We had an open office space where we had fresh fruit, vegetables, cheese, and that's all going to be stopped. We're telling people if they bring food in the office, they got to keep it in their office. We don't want it in the kitchen. And we're actually, as of today, we don't know how long this is going to go on. If you can bring your own coffee, and if that's great. If not, you use our coffee. We want you to wipe it down after you use it.
Excellent. Thank you. Deb, I want to switch back to you. And before Joan, I have some parting question for you before we end and go back to networking. Deb, you've mentioned the playbook a few times. Culture is such a big issue for people these days. And no matter whether they end up partially in a virtual environment, fully in a virtual environment, or fully back in the office, the thing that everybody's going to have to do, other than obviously generating business to keep their top and bottom line strong, is to build a strong culture for their employees. How, from your playbook, are you looking at people trying to incorporate that?
I mean, culture has to, first of all, be authentic. So trying to create a culture in a virtual environment, if you didn't have it going in, it's going to be really hard to create it in this moment. So I think being really genuine, authentic to who you are is the starting point. I know for us and for most of our clients, it's been a daily, very active type of engagement, and it really requires discipline and somebody to own it. We call them the dailies. We do daily updates. We have each one of our employees writing kind of how they're feeling in this moment. We give announcements. We do favorite selfies. We do coffee chats across the firm, across offices, which has been really great. We do a Friday happy hour at 4:30 that we make announcements. This Friday's graduation Friday, so everybody who has graduates is sending photos. We've done videos. It is a full-time job, and but it's really, really, really important, because one of the questions in our survey that I found to be super important, which might be important to the people on the call, the biggest thing people miss is the connectivity to people in this work from home environment, and people can skip over that piece of data as being not important. I actually focus on that the most, because we can't lose sight of that, because that is why we must return to work. That is why human connection is really the core of who we all are as human beings. So I think maintaining a culture, though, requires somebody to be accountable for it. It can't just be pushed aside to somebody's kind of minor job. So we take it really seriously, and most of our clients have worked doubly hard in this moment to keep it going. So
thank you. Dr. Joan, I want to end with you before we turn it back to the tables to let people network and talk among themselves. Final thoughts with regard to ensuring a healthy start to these safe and productive workspaces. I mean, we're all in uncharted territory here. We're all itching to get back to whatever normal looks like. How do we start? What should everybody walk away from here thinking, here's what I need to do next?
I'll build on what Deb said, building trust and building confidence. And that is built, though, on transparency and honesty and admitting when you don't know. Not saying you have all the answers and everything is going to be fine tomorrow, but that you'll get through this together. Like any crisis, times will be uncertain, and the further out you get from that crisis, you'll know more and more and more. Information will become better the further out you get from the event. And this is very similar to that. So having that infrastructure to transparently communicate with your key stakeholders, with your customers, and letting them know their safety, their health is the top priority. And then secondly, as well, actually doing that, thinking about all of the things that we're talking about around keeping your people safe and keeping your facilities safe.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Joan, Fred, Deb, Aaron, I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. We hope that all of you out there had an opportunity to pick up something that's going to help you be able to get your offices reopened and start getting back to work. In a second, you're going to find yourself seated back at your table. We encourage you to feel free to network with others, or you can choose to hop into another table and network with other people there as well. You should be able to hover your mouse over the people sitting at various tables to identify friends, colleagues, customers, prospects that you'd like to network with for a little while. We'll keep the event live for a little bit more. I believe it says 1:30, but I think we're going to keep it open beyond that, including up to 2 o'clock. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron.
Correct.
For those who want more time to be able to stay in this environment. But I want to have a big thanks to those companies for helping bring this event to life: University Hospitals, Ancora, Vocon, our friends at Smart Business, my team, and Alliance Solutions Group, powered by Talent Launch. We want to thank you all for helping join us, and we hope you have some time to network and stick around for a while. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.